The discovery. The void between stars had always been silent, but on this particular cycle, something changed. Scout Commander Thera of the Valorian Empire had patrolled the outer drift sector for 12 standard years without incident. Her vessel, the Swift Talon, was designed for long-range reconnaissance, equipped with the finest sensors Valorian technology could produce. She expected nothing more than routine stellar mapping and the occasional rogue asteroid to mark in her logs. Then, her console erupted with warnings she had never seen before. Thera's form manipulator. Appendages moved rapidly across the controls, her violet-hued exoskeleton reflecting the crimson emergency lights that now bathed her command chamber. The energy readings made no sense. Something massive was displacing space itself approximately 2 light hours from her current position. The signature was unlike anything in the Valorian database, and her people had cataloged phenomena across 47 star systems over 3 millennia. She activated the long-range visual arrays, directing them toward the anomaly. For several moments, there was nothing but the usual darkness of deep space, punctuated by distant stars. Then the fabric of reality seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by an unseen hand. Colors that shouldn't exist in normal space bled through the void, creating a cascade of light that hurt to observe even through filtered displays. Something was coming through. Thera had heard stories from the ancient archives about species that could manipulate dimensional barriers, but those were considered myths, tales from a more primitive time when Valorians still believed in cosmic spirits and divine interventions. Yet here, before her very sensors, the impossible was occurring. A tear in space expanded, and through it emerged a vessel so enormous that Thera's mind initially refused to accept what she was seeing. The ship was angular and brutal in its design, constructed from a dark alloy that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It stretched across her viewport, segment after segment emerging from the dimensional fold. Thera commanded her computer to calculate dimensions, but the numbers kept climbing. 5 kilometers, 8 kilometers, 12 kilometers, 15 kilometers from bow to stern. The largest warship in the Valorian fleet measured barely 3 kilometers. This vessel was 5 times that size. The implications were staggering and terrifying. Along the hull, she could see rows upon rows of what appeared to be weapon emplacements, though their design was completely foreign. Massive engine arrays, each one larger than her entire scout ship, glowed with a soft blue luminescence. The vessel bristled with sensor arrays, communications dishes, and structures whose purposes she could only guess at. This was not a merchant vessel. This was not a colony transport. This was a warship built on a scale that suggested its creators either faced unimaginable threats or intended to become one. Thera initiated first contact protocols, broadcasting on all standard frequencies. Her message was simple and had been refined over centuries of Valorian exploration. A mathematical sequence demonstrating intelligence, followed by peaceful greetings in visual, audio, and electromagnetic formats. She transmitted the location of Valorian space, offered coordinates for diplomatic contact, and requested identification. The response came swiftly, but it was not what she expected. Instead of a greeting or even a demand, she received what her systems interpreted as an automated warning. The message was precise and carried an undertone of absolute certainty. The vessel identified itself only as UES Prometheus, classified as a Titan-class strategic defense platform. The warning stated that any approach within 50,000 kilometers would be considered a hostile act. Any weapons lock would trigger immediate defensive countermeasures. Any attack would be met with overwhelming force. The message repeated in 17 different formats, as if the creators wanted to ensure no misunderstanding was possible. Thera noted with growing alarm that several of those formats utilized mathematical principles and physics concepts that Valorian science had only theorized about, but never successfully implemented. Whoever built this ship possessed technology significantly more advanced than anything the Galactic Coalition had ever encountered. She immediately transmitted a priority alert to Valorian High Command, including all sensor data, visual recordings, and the automated message from the human vessel. Then she did what any sensible scout would do when encountering something far beyond their capability to handle. She withdrew to a safe distance and waited. The response from High Command came within 3 standard hours, which told Thera everything she needed to know about how seriously they were taking this situation. Normally, Communications across such distances took longer due to relay processing and bureaucratic review. This message had been marked with emergency priority codes reserved for existential threats. She was ordered to maintain observation, but avoid any action that could be perceived as aggressive. A diplomatic courier was being dispatched along with military escort. The Valorian Council was convening an emergency session. Most significantly, they were activating ancient protocols to contact the other members of the Galactic Coalition, species that normally operated independently, but had agreed millennia ago to unite when facing unknown dangers from beyond their collective borders. Thera settled in for a long watch. She configured her sensors for maximum passive observation, recording everything the massive human warship did. For the most part, it simply held position in space, its engines maintaining station keeping with minimal output. Occasionally, she detected scanning beams sweeping outward in all directions, mapping the surrounding space with extraordinary precision. The ship was clearly studying its environment, learning about where it had emerged. What disturbed Thera most was the efficiency of those scans. Each sweep provided the human vessel with more information than Valorian sensors could gather in an entire day of active scanning. The power requirements alone should have been impossible for any reactor system she knew about. Yet this ship performed such tasks with what appeared to be casual ease, as if barely tapping its true capabilities. Over the following hours, Thera watched as other vessels began arriving. First came 3 more Valorian scout ships, followed by a diplomatic cruiser bearing the Council's seal. Then ships from other coalition species started appearing. The Crethani sent their angular crystal ships that refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. The Dalvari arrived in their organic vessels, grown rather than built, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The mechanical Synthera dispatched perfectly geometric cubes that hummed with electromagnetic fields. Within 2 standard days, nearly 300 vessels representing 7 different civilizations had gathered at what was now being called the Prometheus boundary. They maintained the 50,000-kilometer distance the human ship had specified, but they formed a loose perimeter, watching and waiting. Diplomatic channels buzzed with constant communication as coalition representatives debated how to proceed. Some argued for immediate military action. The Crethani, in particular, believed that any species capable of building such a vessel represented a clear threat that should be eliminated before it could threaten coalition worlds. Their own history was filled with conflicts against aggressive civilizations, and they viewed overwhelming force as the only logical response. Others counseled patience. The Dalvari, whose philosophy emphasized understanding before judgment, suggested that the human ship had done nothing hostile. It had emerged, announced its presence, and established clear boundaries. These were not the actions of an aggressor seeking conquest. They were the actions of a cautious species establishing defensive parameters. The Synthera, beings of pure logic, analyzed all available data and concluded that the probability of successfully destroying the human vessel with current coalition forces was less than 8%. Their calculations suggested that even if every ship present opened fire simultaneously, the Prometheus's defensive systems would likely neutralize the attack. Furthermore, they estimated that the human ship's offensive capabilities, if proportional to its defensive systems, could eliminate the entire coalition fleet within minutes. This assessment sent shockwaves through the diplomatic channels. The coalition had maintained peace for centuries precisely because no single species held overwhelming military advantage over the others. Balance ensured cooperation, but this human vessel shattered that balance completely. If humans possessed even 3 or 4 more ships of this class, they could potentially dominate the entire galactic region without significant opposition. Fear began to spread beyond the military and diplomatic corps. News of the massive human warship leaked to civilian populations across coalition worlds. On Valoria Prime, citizens demanded their government take action to protect them. On the Crethani homeworld, ancient war hymns that hadn't been sung in generations echoed through crystal spires. The Dalvari entered periods of collective meditation, seeking wisdom from their planetary consciousness. The Synthera began calculating evacuation scenarios for their core worlds. Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Sarah Chen observed the gathering alien fleet with a mixture of hope and concern. She was a veteran of humanity's exploratory forces, chosen to command the Titan-class vessel precisely because of her diplomatic skills and her ability to remain calm under pressure. When Earth's long-range telescopes had first detected signs of multiple alien civilizations 15 years ago, humanity had faced a fundamental choice: hide and hope to remain undiscovered, or prepare for contact from a position of strength. They had chosen strength, but not out of aggression. Humanity's history was filled with examples of what happened when technologically advanced civilizations encountered less developed ones. The results were rarely good for the less advanced party. Earth scientists and strategists had concluded that if humanity was to survive first contact with unknown alien species, they needed to ensure they would be treated as equals, not as primitives to be conquered or exploited. Thus, the Titan-class program was born. 6 massive warships, each representing the absolute pinnacle of human engineering, physics manipulation, and military capability. They were designed to send a clear message: humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but they were not helpless. They would negotiate from strength, not weakness. Captain Chen had not expected their first contact to generate such a dramatic response. Nearly 300 alien vessels now surrounded her ship, maintaining a wary distance. Her sensor officers reported constant scanning attempts from the alien fleet, though none had crossed the threshold into actual weapons targeting. The aliens were studying the Prometheus just as intensely as the Prometheus was studying them. She stood on the bridge, a circular chamber located deep within the ship's armored core. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing tactical data, communications intercepts, and real-time analysis of the alien vessels. Her crew of 8,000 worked throughout the ship's 15-kilometer length, maintaining systems, analyzing data, and preparing for whatever might come next. Her executive officer, Commander James Park, approached with a data tablet. He was a calm presence, someone who had served with Chen for over a decade. His dark eyes showed concern but not panic as he delivered his report. The alien fleet continues to grow. We now count 312 vessels from 7 distinct technological bases. Linguistic analysis has identified preliminary communication patterns. The AI estimates we could achieve basic translation within another 48 hours if we had direct communication rather than just intercepts. Chen nodded slowly. She had been expecting this moment, but that didn't make it any easier. Humanity's first words to alien civilizations would be remembered forever, analyzed and debated for generations. They needed to be perfect, needed to convey exactly the right message. Prepare a first contact package, she ordered. Full spectrum broadcast all the formats we've identified in their communications. Message is simple. We are humans from the planet Earth. We come in peace and seek dialogue with the civilizations of this region. We mean no harm to anyone, but we will defend ourselves if threatened. Include our star charts, our history of space exploration, and our diplomatic protocols. Commander Park hesitated. Captain, some of the Admiralty back home suggested we maintain strategic ambiguity about our capabilities and origins. Chen shook her head. No. Fear is what's driving this situation. The only way to reduce that fear is through transparency. We show them who we are, where we come from, and what we want. Honesty is the only foundation for real peace. As Park moved to execute her orders, Chen turned back to the displays showing the alien fleet. Somewhere out there were beings just as intelligent as humans, just as capable of reason and emotion, facing the same fears and uncertainties that she felt. The next few days would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community as friends or whether the galaxy would unite against them as a common threat. She took a deep breath and spoke quietly to herself, repeating words she had memorized years ago during her training. We reach out our hand in friendship, and we hope others will take it. But if they raise their fist instead, we will be ready. The message from the Prometheus transmitted across all frequencies, racing toward the alien fleet at the speed of light. In moments it would be received, translated, and analyzed. The response would determine everything. History was being written in the darkness between stars, and no one knew how the story would end. The confrontation. The human message reached the coalition fleet within seconds, and chaos erupted across diplomatic channels. Translators worked frantically to decode the transmission, while military analysts studied every nuance of the broadcast for hidden meanings or threats. What they found surprised everyone. The humans had included everything: star charts showing the location of their home system, detailed records of their space exploration history spanning barely 2 centuries, cultural information about their species, and even genetic data demonstrating their biological makeup. It was a level of transparency that no coalition species had ever offered during first contact. Most civilizations revealed such information gradually, over decades of careful negotiation. Ambassador Velis of the Valorian Council studied the translated data with growing fascination. She was an elder of her species, her exoskeleton bearing the darker hues that came with advanced age and wisdom. She had participated in 3 previous first contact scenarios during her long career, and none had proceeded quite like this. The humans were offering complete vulnerability. They were showing exactly where their homeworld was located, providing enough information that any hostile force could target Earth directly. Either this was an elaborate trap, or the humans genuinely believed that honesty would be reciprocated with peaceful intentions. Velis hoped it was the latter, but centuries of diplomatic experience had taught her that hope alone was insufficient. She convened an emergency session with the senior coalition representatives present. The meeting took place aboard her diplomatic cruiser, the Harmonious Dawn, in a chamber designed to accommodate the various physical requirements of different species. The Crithani representative, War Speaker Zethus, attended via holographic projection, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. The Delvari sent Speaker Root Mama, whose organic vessel attached directly to the ship's hull, allowing her consciousness to extend into the meeting chamber. The Synthera designated Unit 7 Prime to represent their collective intelligence. Velis opened the discussion with characteristic directness. The humans have responded to our presence with complete transparency. This is either genuine peaceful intent or sophisticated deception. We must decide our response carefully, as our next action will likely determine whether we gain an ally or create an enemy. War Speaker. Zethus pulsed with aggressive crimson light. His voice resonated with harmonics that the translation systems rendered as barely controlled anger. They show us their homeworld's location as if daring us to attack. They display a warship 5 times larger than anything we possess. This is not peace, Ambassador. This is intimidation disguised with pleasant words. They want us to know they can destroy us if we threaten them. Speaker Root Mama's response came in the gentle, multi-layered tones characteristic of Delvari communication. Or perhaps they show vulnerability, because they genuinely seek friendship. Consider their history, which they freely shared. These humans have only recently achieved interstellar capability. They have encountered no other intelligent species before us. They built their massive ship not from aggression but from fear of the unknown. We should understand that fear, as we have all felt it. Unit 7 Prime contributed its logical analysis. Probability assessment indicates that human military doctrine emphasizes defensive capabilities over offensive projection. Analysis of their ship's design shows disproportionate investment in shielding, armor, and point defense systems compared to main weapons arrays. This suggests a species that prepares to receive attack rather than initiate it. Recommendation: attempt diplomatic contact with peaceful intent while maintaining defensive readiness. Velis listened to each perspective, weighing them carefully. The Crithani view came from their history of conflicts with aggressive species. The Delvari perspective reflected their philosophical belief in universal consciousness and connection. The Synthera offered pure mathematical probability. All were valid viewpoints, but they needed to reach consensus. After hours of debate, they agreed on a course of action. A small diplomatic delegation would approach the human vessel, broadcasting peaceful intentions and requesting direct communication. The delegation would include representatives from all 7 coalition species present, demonstrating unity while showing respect through numbers. They would maintain complete transparency in their approach, matching the humans' openness with their own. However, as a precaution, the military fleet would remain on high alert. If the diplomatic mission failed or if the humans proved hostile, the coalition forces would implement a containment strategy, attempting to prevent the Prometheus from reaching any inhabited worlds until a more substantial military response could be organized. The diplomatic vessel chosen was the Valorian ship Gentle Approach, a small cruiser designed specifically for first contact scenarios. It was unarmed, its hull painted with peaceful symbols recognized across coalition space, and its engines capable of only modest speeds, demonstrating it posed no threat. Aboard were 7 ambassadors, each representing one of the civilizations present. As the gentle approach began its journey toward the Prometheus, Captain Sarah Chen watched its progress with a mixture of relief and tension. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Maria Santos, had been monitoring all alien transmissions, and the linguistic AI had made significant progress in understanding the aliens' languages. "They're coming in peace, Captain," Santos reported, her fingers dancing across her console as she refined the translation algorithms. "The vessel is unarmed and broadcasting what our AI interprets as diplomatic protocols. They want to talk." Chen felt tension drain from her shoulders slightly. This was the response she had hoped for but couldn't guarantee. Humanity's gamble on transparency appeared to be paying off. She straightened in her command chair and addressed her bridge crew. "All stations, maintain defensive posture but make no aggressive moves. I want those aliens to see we're ready to defend ourselves, but we're not looking for a fight." Santos, prepare a response welcoming their diplomatic vessel. Park, assemble a reception team. If they want to talk, we'll talk. Commander Park raised an eyebrow. "You're planning to allow them aboard the Prometheus?" Chen nodded firmly. "They're showing trust by approaching us in an unarmed vessel. We need to reciprocate. Besides, if they wanted to attack, they would have done so already with their entire fleet. This is our chance to build something positive." The gentle approach crossed the 50,000-kilometer boundary that the Prometheus had established, moving slowly and broadcasting peaceful intentions on every frequency. Chen ordered the defensive perimeter relaxed for this single vessel, allowing it to approach to within 5 kilometers. At that distance, the diplomatic cruiser appeared tiny against the Prometheus's massive hull. Like a small bird approaching a mountain, communication protocols were established, and for the first time, humans and aliens spoke directly to each other. The translation systems were imperfect, creating occasional confusion, but the fundamental messages came through clearly. Ambassador Velis introduced herself and her fellow representatives, explaining the coalition and its purpose. Captain Chen responded by describing humanity's journey to the stars and their hope for peaceful coexistence. The conversation was cautious at first, with both sides carefully choosing their words. But gradually understanding began to form. The aliens explained their fear upon discovering such a massive warship. Chen explained humanity's fear of encountering potentially hostile civilizations without adequate defense. Both sides realized they had been operating from the same emotion, fear of the unknown. After several hours of discussion, Ambassador Velis made a request. "Captain Chen, my colleagues and I would be honored if you would allow us to visit your vessel. We wish to see your ship not as potential enemies studying a threat, but as fellow spacefaring species learning about new friends. Would you grant us this trust?" Chen considered carefully. Allowing aliens aboard the Prometheus would give them invaluable intelligence about human technology, but it would also demonstrate humanity's genuine peaceful intentions. Trust had to start somewhere. "Ambassador Velis, you and your delegation are welcome aboard. I'll have my crew prepare appropriate accommodations for your various physiologies. Please come see what humanity has built, and understand that we built it not to threaten others but to ensure our own survival." The docking procedure took careful coordination. The gentle approach attached to one of the Prometheus's auxiliary airlocks, and engineering teams worked to create an environment that could support all 7 alien physiologies simultaneously. It was a complex challenge, but human adaptability and technology proved equal to the task. When the airlock finally opened, Captain Chen stood waiting with a full honor guard. She had chosen to meet the aliens in the docking bay rather than a formal conference room, wanting them to see human military personnel at ease rather than on high alert. The honor guard stood at attention but carried no visible weapons, another demonstration of peaceful intent. Ambassador Velis emerged first, her violet exoskeleton gleaming under the Prometheus's lights. She moved with surprising grace despite her alien physiology, and Chen could see intelligence and caution in her multifaceted eyes. Behind Velis came the other ambassadors, each one unique and fascinating. The crystalline Krithani, the fluid organic form of the Dilvari, the perfect geometric shape of the Synthera, representatives of species humanity had never imagined encountering. Chen stepped forward and performed a gesture her cultural advisors had designed for this moment. hands extended, palms up, showing she carried no weapons and offered openness. Welcome aboard the UES Prometheus. I am Captain Sarah Chen. On behalf of humanity, I greet you in peace and friendship. The translation systems conveyed her words to the various aliens, and Chen watched their reactions carefully. Velus's antennae moved in what the cultural database suggested was a positive response. The Krithani's crystalline structure pulsed with calmer colors than before. The Dulvari's organic form rippled with patterns that seemed peaceful. Ambassador Velus responded in her own language, which the translation system rendered in English. Captain Chen, we thank you for your hospitality. This is a historic moment for all our species. May it be the beginning of lasting friendship. Chen led the delegation on a carefully planned tour of the Prometheus. She showed them the medical facilities, demonstrating humanity's commitment to preserving life. She took them to the hydroponics bays where food was grown, illustrating human self-sufficiency and connection to living things. She displayed the crew quarters, showing how human personnel lived during long deployments. Notably, she also showed them the defensive systems, explaining honestly how they worked and why humanity had invested so heavily in protection. This transparency surprised the aliens but also reassured them. Chen was holding nothing back, treating them as equals who deserved to understand human capabilities. War Speaker Zethus, the Krathani representative, examined one of the shield generators with intense interest. His crystalline structure hummed as he processed what he was seeing. This technology is remarkable. Our best shields could not withstand a fraction of what your systems deflected during our test firing. How did you achieve such advancement in so short a time? Chen smiled slightly. Necessity and desperation make excellent teachers. When we first detected your civilizations, we had no way of knowing whether you would be peaceful or hostile. We couldn't take chances with the survival of our entire species, so we took every theory, every experimental concept, every wild idea our scientists had proposed, and we made them work. Fear motivated us to achieve in 2 decades what might have taken 2 centuries under normal circumstances. Speaker Root. Mama pulsed with understanding. You built from fear, but you approach from hope. This balance is wisdom. Many species never achieve such understanding. The tour continued for hours, and gradually, the atmosphere shifted from cautious formality to genuine curiosity. The aliens asked questions about human culture, history, and biology. Chen answered honestly, even discussing humanity's darker moments, their wars and conflicts and mistakes. She believed that hiding humanity's flaws would ultimately undermine trust. Unit 7 Prime posed a question that cut to the heart of the matter. Captain Chen, your vessel possesses destructive capability far exceeding anything in Coalition space. Your technology in several areas surpasses our own despite your species' recent emergence as spacefaring civilization. What assurance can you provide that humanity will not use these advantages to dominate or conquer? Chen had anticipated this question. She led the delegation to the Prometheus's Strategic Command Center, where holographic displays showed Earth and its scattered colonies. She gestured to the images of her homeworld, beautiful and fragile against the darkness of space. This is what we're protecting. Every human aboard this ship has family down there, friends, people they love. We built the Prometheus not to project power outward, but to ensure that no matter what we encountered in the stars, Earth would remain safe. We're not conquerors, we're defenders, and more than that, we're explorers who hope to find friends among the stars. She turned to face the alien delegation directly. I can't give you absolute assurance because that would require you to simply trust my words. Instead, I offer you ongoing transparency. Send observers to human space, station ships near our colonies, monitor our activities. We'll hide nothing because we have nothing sinister to hide. Judge us by our actions over time, not by your fears in this moment. Ambassador Velus studied Chen carefully, her alien features unreadable by human standards, but her body language suggested deep thought. After a long moment, she spoke. Captain Chen, you have taken great risk today by allowing us aboard your vessel. You have shown us capabilities that could be used against us, yet you did so anyway. This demonstrates either foolishness or genuine peaceful intent. I do not believe you are foolish. She turned to her fellow ambassadors. I propose we recommend to the Coalition that humanity be offered preliminary diplomatic relations. They will not be granted full membership immediately, as that requires extensive evaluation. But we should establish communication protocols, cultural exchange programs, and mutual observation agreements. We should give peace a chance. War Speaker Zethus pulsed with colors that suggested reluctance but acceptance. I do not fully trust these humans yet, but I acknowledge they have acted with more honor than I expected. I will support cautious engagement. One by one, the other ambassadors voiced their agreement. The Dulvari with enthusiasm, the Synthera with logical analysis, and the others with varying degrees of optimism and caution. It was not a perfect consensus, but it was a beginning. As the diplomatic delegation prepared to return to their vessel, Ambassador Velis approached Captain Chen privately. She spoke quietly, her translated words carrying weight. You should know that not all coalition members will welcome humanity as we have today. There are species who will see your power as a threat that must be eliminated. There will be challenges ahead. Chen nodded seriously. We understand, but we'd rather face those challenges as potential friends seeking understanding than as enemies expecting conflict. Thank you, Ambassador, for giving us this chance. Velis's antennae moved in what Chen had learned was a gesture of respect. Thank you, Captain, for proving that sometimes trust is rewarded rather than exploited. Safe travels through the stars. The gentle approach detached from the Prometheus and began its journey back to the Coalition fleet. Aboard the diplomatic cruiser, the ambassadors immediately began composing their report. Within hours, their recommendation would reach Coalition leadership across multiple star systems. The debate would continue for weeks or months, but the foundation had been laid. Captain Chen stood on her bridge and watched the alien fleet begin to disperse. Not all vessels left immediately. Some maintained observation positions, which she expected and accepted, but the immediate threat had passed. Humanity's first contact with alien civilizations had not resulted in war, but in the possibility of friendship. Commander Park approached with a slight smile. Well done, Captain. You just changed human history. Chen shook her head. We changed it together. Every person on this ship, every scientist who developed our technology, every diplomat who prepared our first contact protocols, they all contributed to this moment. She paused, looking at the stars displayed on the view screen. And this is just the beginning. We have so much to learn, so many species to meet, so much universe to explore. She settled back into her command chair and issued her next orders. Helm, set course for the coordinates Ambassador Velis provided for Coalition Diplomatic Headquarters. Communications send a message to Earth Command informing them of our success. All departments maintain standard operational status. We're going to meet our new neighbors properly. The Prometheus's massive engines hummed to life, and the Titan-class warship began moving through space with surprising grace for something so large. Behind it, several Coalition vessels followed at a respectful distance, no longer as suspicious guards, but as curious observers wanting to learn more about humanity. In the days that followed, preliminary agreements were established. Human diplomats began traveling to Coalition worlds. Alien ambassadors visited Earth. Cultural exchange programs were initiated. Scientists from multiple species started sharing knowledge. There were misunderstandings and challenges, as there always are when different civilizations meet, but the foundation of trust that Captain Chen and Ambassador Velis had built held strong. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not through conquest or submission, but through honest dialogue backed by demonstrated capability. They had shown they could defend themselves without needing to threaten others. They had proven that being powerful and being peaceful were not mutually exclusive concepts. Years later, when historians wrote about this pivotal moment, they would note that humanity's first contact succeeded because both sides chose understanding over fear. The Coalition chose to approach rather than attack. Captain Chen chose transparency over strategic ambiguity. And in that mutual choice to take a risk on peace, they opened possibilities that neither side had imagined. The Prometheus continued its mission, no longer as a lone defender in hostile space, but as humanity's ambassador to the stars. Captain Chen and her crew had achieved what they had hoped for. They had ensured humanity's survival not through intimidation, but through respect. The galaxy was no longer an empty void filled with potential threats. It was a community of diverse civilizations, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, their own hopes and fears. And now humanity had found their place among them. Not as conquerors or victims, but as equals reaching out in friendship. The story of humanity's first contact would be told for generations, inspiring future explorers and diplomats. It would serve as a reminder that even in moments of fear and uncertainty, choosing trust and honesty could lead to outcomes better than anyone dared to hope. And in the darkness between stars, where the Prometheus once stood alone, now hundreds of vessels from dozens of species traveled together, united not by conquest or domination, but by the simple choice to reach out their hands in friendship.